Welcome to At the Table with CAHSAH and our special series on California's hospice emergency regulations. My name is Mark Wilson, as always. You know, throughout this series, we've been working our way through the regulations, not just asking what does the regulation say, but more importantly, what does this mean if you actually have to run a hospice? Today, we're talking about something that, I don't know, maybe could be a little underestimated. We're talking about hospice management orientation and annual education. So today, we're going to talk about who needs this education, what should it include, when it needs to happen, documentation needs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And joining us for this conversation are nationally recognized hospice experts Cindy Hatton of Hatton Consulting, Annette of Provider Insights, and Sharon Fredericks of SNS Home Care Consulting. Welcome to all of you. I'm so glad to see you again.
Good to see you.
Annette's a first-timer here in our podcast, so welcome, a special welcome to Annette Lee.
I am. Thank you, Mark. It's awesome to be part of such a great team. Someone else had to punt for me while I was on a plane on the last one that Cindy and I did the webinar, but I missed the podcast. So thank you. I always enjoy your podcast, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we met at the CAHSAH conference, and it was great meeting you. So I'm glad to have you as part of the podcast.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's get started. And I don't care who addresses this. We always kind of start with the big picture. This regulation specifically puts attention on management. Why? Who wants to take that?
Well, Mark, I'm going to lead because Cindy and I looked at this back in March at the manager's certification program in Vegas. Cindy at that time had already put together a fabulous matrix to show what orientation was needed if you were a new administrator, if you had been there for a long time, et cetera. So it's all the kudos really of what you're going to hear during the session of orientation training is really all of her efforts in there. And I just think she's done a great job. I also want to say that we are probably one of the first in the nation to put this much effort into upfront training, which I think is going to really change our standards of care and bring people in that want to be trained and will stay within our organization and in hospice for a long time. But
Awesome.
I just want to say thank you, Cindy, because you have taken the lead on this and done a great job.
Well, thank you. You know, for me, it's always about creating tools for people to make it simple. You know, you read through this big, long list of, the regulation, and it isn't spaced where you can really tell what's under what. And, it just makes it easier. So we've got really good checklists for everybody to use, color coded, because there are some things that you can use across all three positions, because this is for the administrator, for the medical director, and the director of patient care services. And for me, I've always, when I meet people who are administrators or in hospice, in management roles, I always ask, if I teach the management certification, I ask them, well, how long is your orientation? And I'm always like amazed. Oh, 8 hours. Oh, 3 days. I'm like, oh my gosh, how can you learn anything that much? Because it's like an encyclopedia. People always made fun of me. They're like, how do you remember all that? And I said, well, if you've read it 100 times, you remember it. And, it's just a lot. And so this way we have created consistent training that people will have that is required. So it gives everybody a baseline competency. Because we could, in our industry and healthcare, we always, Mark, I think you said it too at one point in time, you bring the nurse who was the best nurse out in the field, and you bring her in and stick her in the director, patient care services, and they've never had management, and you don't bother to train them on management, then they're not going to be satisfied and they leave.
Yeah.
Right. And Mark, I think you asked that question about the why. These ladies are so in the weeds of doing the how. Let's take one step back and go back to the why, is because
with the new regs establishing a baseline criteria, they've already got pieces in place of how we can support hospices across the state. And frankly, I feel like people outside of California would really benefit from these as well. But it was needed because there needs to be that level of expertise at the leadership level. And we didn't have it at all agencies. And sometimes it was just erroneous. Like you said, they put the best nurse in that position and she rose on up, but she didn't have the depth and breadth that was needed and didn't have leadership experience. But it is to ensure that there is someone that the buck stops here, right? That they're going to be responsible to ensure and have the tools and the know-how to ensure good patient care. So that gets me excited because, again, we're making sure that they have what they need to really give the patients and families the care they deserve.
Right. Thank you, Annette. I just want to mention, too, that you guys are going to be drilling down a lot more on this stuff in the webinar next Wednesday. So this is just a little bit of information you can maybe construct some questions with, because during the live webinar, you get to ask actual questions and get actual answers. So I just wanted to remind people of that. Let's move on to a second here to part of this whole thing, first-time hospice leaders. The regulations, let's see, establish education expectation for first-time administrator designees, includes training in areas like hospice operations, HR, onboarding, regulatory requirements, and quality improvements. And it's apparently similar for first-time medical directors and their designees. So let's unpack that a minute. What does first-time mean under these regulations?
So first time means you've never been in that position before. And the caveat is you've never been in that position before in California. So that's a little twist to it. So,
wait a minute. I want to make sure I understand this as an old business development guy. So if I had the position in another state, but I'm coming to California, I'm considered first time.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yes. So, I think it makes sense. I mean, first of all, if you've never done it before, you need this breadth of education because there's a lot for each of these positions to cover and understand. And then the second piece of is if you've not practiced in California, we're different and we have different regulations. So, especially with the emergency ones, people need to learn all those things. They need to know what is expected for each of the, regulations in California.
Well, I think the other thing is I was reviewing the 23 compliance program, and they say right in there, OIG says, healthcare is a totally different business. And like you said, Mark, you were in business development, but if you were in business development doing something else, you wouldn't necessarily know the OIG, the DOJ, and everything that goes with the regulations.
True.
And what the compliance program wants you to do is be compliant, but they want quality and safety at the end. And if we don't, I think that's where all this education to me is wonderful, that it's going to be out there.
Okay, then let me ask this question. What qualifies as an acceptable education then?
Well, I think that we, in the industry, had worked with the state. We had many, I think we had 8, didn't we, Sharon? We had 8 meetings with them since 2023.
Yes.
And we've been talking about it. And a lot of the things that are in there as far as suggested topics are things that people deal with every day. So it's very practical. And then, like Sharon says, all the different agencies that survey you and regulation, the OIG, the DOJ, all these people, it is important for them to know these things.
So does the education have to come from an outside organization, or can I do it internally?
Yes, you can do it internally, but it is a lot. It just depends. I looked through what the regulations were, and actually we had a very robust orientation at my organization. I believe in education and support it wholeheartedly. And, we had covered most of those topics, and maybe there was some organization we didn't get quite in depth about. But yeah, I mean, I think they're all important. And so, they're on there for that reason.
And Mark, I love that they're not really prescriptive. They do allow the agency can have part of it. Part of it can be online through a vendor that they're using. Part of it could be that you attend webinars from CAHSAH or another outside source. And so, but they're very definitive about what has to be covered. But how you do it isn't prescribed. So that's kind of nice. It affords us some flexibility, but you just want to make sure that we're capturing all the components.
Okay, because I was going to ask that a little bit later. What do we actually have to teach? What kind of things? But I've been around long enough to know, of course, that if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So how does a hospice prove that these individuals actually completed all this training, particularly if they're doing it internally? I mean, if you get a certificate from hospice or from CAHSAH, then we know. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, internally, the organization would be, putting, when would it, all the same things that we always have to do. When did it occur? Who attended? And they also want to know who taught the class. So they want to make sure whoever's teaching the class, it has experience to be able to be teaching the class. So yes, those are some of the things. And we'll talk more about that.
Because there are specifics, Mark, that they do want.
Okay. So there's a checklist that I can go down if I'm
another checklist.
Okay.
Yep, one more checklist.
Check the box, check the box, check the box.
That's right. You have here's your list, a checklist.
And I do think the surveyors are going to be looking for that checklist that it's completed. And then also remember, this is just the state. So your accrediting organizations may still have additional things that they want you to have for orientation and training also. Right.
Okay.
Can't forget about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So orientation gets somebody through the door, but that brings us to annual education. What are those expectations for hospices?
Well, annually, you've got to do 12 hours. It's 12 hours, and it's annually, and it's from your start date. So, it gives you time. And the topics are really topics that have usually some updates to them. It's not the same thing every, year, because there's going to be updates. So it is 12 hours. And so you can do that in sections. And also CAHSAH is putting together some of these webinars that you can do on demand that will cover these topics. They also have a certain amount of hours you have to spend in different topics. So CAHSAH's working on that to make it easier for organizations just to be able to have those and plug them in and play. And then our certification program is, Sharon said, we met in March of this year and went through our current certification program topics and what we were covering. And for hospice, I think we only had probably a handful of things to add. And it was really more of all the regulatory people of, who's who coming in to look at your charts.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on that before I move on to competency? Because we brought this up before. We talked about it a little bit. There's the difference between proving somebody attended training and making sure that they actually understand their job. So how does the whole idea of competency enter into these regs? Is the certificate of completion enough?
No, yeah, maybe Annette. I mean, she's out there in the field. We're doing surveys all the time.
They're definitely the hardiest, right? We have a lot more detail in our regs. We have more detail in the CDPH emergency regs than I would say any of the accrediting organizations, and definitely more than any state regs. And obviously, it is far and above the COPs. So with that said, it's establishing a new baseline for the level of competency that all of these positions are going to have, which I know feels burdensome when it's new, but as we are able to provide these tools and it just becomes part of the norm right? That now we do this at orientation, it's already done for you, and you can take that package and run with it, and the 12 hours each year as well. It is just bringing us up to a whole new level, which I'm really excited about because, again, this was done out of, it was mother necessity because of the problems we were having in California. But once we get through this fire, if we are going to be at a whole new level of really setting the bar for people and setting the bar for states and for, I think accrediting organizations are looking at some of these as well. So I'm excited about how this is going to translate into competency because, the accrediting organizations, the COPs don't really speak to it, but the accrediting organizations are already looking for us to ensure that there's at minimum some checklists that, yes, we have assessed competency at a base level, but this is going to, again, really up the ante with that. So that's good news,
And
really.
And if they attend the certification program, we have a certification exam for the
Yes.
director of patient care services or manager level. We also have one for the administrative level. And for the physicians, the physician group, it's the hospice medical director certification. They also have a course, and they have a course, and then they also have a certification exam. So there are exams for those certifications. I have talked with SUA about incorporating some kind of testing at the end of all of our webinars. So, anytime you take any of those online classes, they always have some questions at the end, and you have to get a certain score in order to get credit. So
And you're talking about Sua Vang, CEO of CAHSAH, just in
Yes.
case somebody who's
Yes.
listening doesn't know Sua.
Yes.
All righty then, let's move along. I don't know if this is maybe one of the more important parts of today's conversation, but I wonder if, hospices can respond in different ways. They can scramble every year trying to figure out who needs what training, or they can build a system. So if you're advising hospice today, what does that system look like? I mean, should they have like an annual calendar of some kind? I mean, what would you recommend?
I think that's wise, Mark, to have that because, frankly, pulling people out of the field for large chunks of time is difficult from an operational point of view. So having a calendar, being able to roll this out in a methodical manner, there are specifications in the time frame for orientation, but as far as that 12 hours, you definitely want to be just methodical and, bite by bite, hour by hour. So that way, again, it doesn't interrupt the actual operations. It's just ensuring that we're staying up to date and we're meeting the regulation. But also, again, as I know that the other two ladies mentioned, that this is going to evolve as well because of the updates that constantly happen. I mean, we just got our finalized hospice rule. I mean, there's always something happening in this world of ours. So being able to ensure that we're giving the proper updated information is important. And so that's why I like that methodical approach.
So Sharon, let me put this to you. Would you recommend building the orientation and annual education directly into policies and procedures?
I always use them together.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a business development guy. I don't know.
You have professionals out there. If they understand why you're doing it, rather than just say you do it, but here is the regulation. This is how the nation is providing quality care to people. Here's our mission statement, reflects a little bit differently than everybody else's. But once I've found most professionals say, oh, now I know why you're telling me I have to do this and why I have to document this way.
Okay, and let me put this one to Cindy. How should an agency audit itself to make sure that the system is actually working?
Well, I think a couple things. You've got to, it's just like any other required education that we've had. I think when I think about it, I think of the home health aides. They have to have 12 hours a year. And we have, mechanisms to make sure that they have completed those. And I think the other thing is that we talked about these tests at the end of these sessions to make sure that they comprehend it. You could get creative if you're an organization. I had a manager one time. I just loved her. We were getting ready for Joint Commission, and we were trying to update everybody on remember this and remember that. And of course, there's a million things to remember, but she would put a question on the whiteboard. And of course, back then the staff would come in the office every day to do something. And she would put that question out. And then she started doing it on the voicemail. And she would put the question out to people, and then people responded, and they loved it. And there were prizes. We always have given prizes for stuff. That always helps people. But, you can just if you flavor it in, I think it works.
What kind of prizes? I want to know, like new cars or
Yeah, sure.
trips to Vegas. You get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car.
Yeah.
Again, as you mentioned, Mark, healthcare is a very different sort of business.
Yes, that's right. We're not giving cars. But we do,
the prize was
Starbucks gift certificates are always a big fan because they're out in the field and they're, they can grab actually healthy lunch and they can get a little hit of caffeine.
Well,
Okay.
our prizes were once you really understood the competency, you got to be the teacher in any format,
cool.
humor, or whatever you wanted to use. And people would bring their parents in to teach stuff. It
That
was
is
hilarious.
That's fun, Sharon.
Maybe the prize would
It
be you
was
get to
fun.
keep your job. I'm just
Yes,
saying.
that's
It's a
true.
little old school. It's a little old school. But that's what my father would have said. That's the prize. You get to keep your job.
Yeah.
Okay, a little bit of a lightning round here. Let me start with Annette on this one. A new administrator starts Monday. What's the first thing the hospice should do?
Ooh. Well, I think obviously we have the regulatory standpoint, but I also think we want to share the mission. When you guys were talking about the mission statement, we want to share the mission of this agency and ensure that they are on board with this, because even though we're talking about all these regulatory requirements about competency and education and getting all this knowledge in those brains, if they're not going to fit the actual culture, if they're not in it for the right reasons, we want to know that from the start. They need to know it. We need to know it. And so I think establishing culture is A-okay to start with, even before I dive into these regs.
Okay, I got to follow up on that. So a manager says to you, I've been in hospice for 20 years. Why do I need annual education?
Boy, well,
Because your mother said so. No.
I was going to say that's what
'Cause you
we'd like
wanna
to say,
keep
right?
your
The regs say we
job.
have to. But I would emphasize that, obviously every hospice, while we have the same regs, we do vary, right? And so we want to ensure that at our hospice that we're all on the same page with these things. Plus, things continue to evolve. Regulations evolve, care practices evolve, our understanding of things like pain control and medications evolve. So, if I can get to their hearts, if their heart is still clinically driven, if I can even get there through that, I'll use that tool, because again, all things do change. So we want to be on the cutting edge.
Again, I'm going to go back to my father. Why do I need this annual education? Because you want to keep your job, right?
Mark, we're just going to bring you in every agency to
I'm
say
just
this.
saying, it's not hard.
And you want to stay in compliance so you stay open so people have
Right.
jobs.
Thank you.
And I
Right.
think that's a huge thing now. People are very fearful because these, the suspended payments and all the things that are going on. And, you want to make sure you do your organization is still in business. And, I'm like Annette, culture is huge. And I've always told managers, yes, you have 10 years experience. We're so excited, but we're going to teach you how to do it our way. And that is the biggest thing that for us. And, I've had managers who our management philosophy and how we manage our organization as far as compliance, and then also our staff and how we work with our staff. There were some managers who just were like, well, and they didn't make it. They weren't, like you said, they weren't a fit. So, that's all entwined in all of this.
Well, I know, but I think none of us here on this podcast haven't heard somebody talk about the fact that, well, if they don't like it, if they don't want to do it, then they're going to leave. And the workforce shortage is bad enough. I can't afford to lose anybody. So I might be a little lax on the education thing, but you really can't be because of the regulations. So you're kind of, some people, I understand it. They feel like they're between a rock and a hard place on, oh boy, I don't want them to leave. They can go someplace else.
The other thing is that if organizations have a CEU ability to give their staff CEUs for presentations that they give themselves, then that will also help them earn their CEUs that they need for their professional license. CAHSAH gives out, for the different educational programs, the webinars, people are getting CEUs for those. And so that is another piece. It's sort of another incentive for people to want to complete things.
Okay. And lightning round. We're still in the lightning round. This goes to Sharon. Survey's coming next month. What's the first thing you would audit? Go.
First thing I would audit is all the audits that I've been doing for the last 3 years and make sure that I can show them that I have been keeping up on everything. If you call us 3 months before you're ready it's a waste of everybody's time and money because it is a consensual, it goes on and on and on every single month. You kind of get maybe 6 weeks after they accept all your responses. I say, everybody then take a breath, but you've got to start right in again. And you better be able to show that, unfortunately. So I would like to just see the progress of what you've identified, what you're in the process of resolving, and audits that you have resolved them.
Again, much deeper dive on this stuff during the webinar next Wednesday. We hope that we have whet your appetite a bit. You can listen to this podcast, maybe get a few questions in your mind, and then ask those questions at the webinar. Does anybody have anything else to offer before I sign off on this particular episode?
Nope. Delightful as usual, Mark. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mark.
Delightful. Okay. So, like I said, CAHSAH will continue the discussion in our live hospice management orientation annual education webinar. All three of you going to be involved in that?
We've been sort of doing it. Annette and I are doing the main teaching, and then Sharon and Eric usually will be on the webinar as well. And so at times when questions come in, we all sort of answer. So you really get the knowledge of, all of us.
Okay. Sounds like
you taught us well with the podcast how to do that, Mark. We just follow right through.
It sounds like a commitment issue to me, but I'm just saying. All right. So again, this special podcast series is designed to help you understand the regulations and then again, get the deeper dive on the webinar. The webinars actually help you implement everything. So for CAHSAH, I'm Mark Wilson. Thanks for joining us for this special edition of At the Table with CAHSAH. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.